Hello and welcome back to the Campaign Chronicles, which is France 24's regular countdown to the presidential elections. For this, I'm joined by Chris Moore here in the studio. Hi there, Chris.
Hello.
We're going to be speaking in just a moment because the race for the Élysée Palace is now officially underway. 5 p.m. on Friday was the deadline for French presidential nominees to file their papers at the Constitutional Council. Well, to get on the ballot, they each needed the support of at least 500 of France's mayors or other elected officials. Let's take a look.
500 signatures were all he needed, but Socialist presidential nominee François Hollande made the quota many times over. His campaign team delivered the documents to the Constitutional Council.
I'd say we reached between 4,000 and 5,000 signatures quite easily. Yesterday afternoon we had 4,500, so we have no worries.
Other candidates had more of a fight to get the backing they needed from elected officials around the country, even though far-right candidate Marine Le Pen has been consistently polling in third place behind Hollande and the incumbent Nicolas Sarkozy. She only just squeezed in. Philippe Poutou, nominee for the leftist New Anti-Capitalist Party, delivered 572 names.
It was 8 months of very hard work. We persevered, we believed we could do it, and we were right. We're proud of having succeeded, and we're proud to be able to represent the oppressed, proud to be putting forward a candidate for the working class.
The left will also be represented by Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the left front candidate. He said he had no trouble winning support.
We had some difficulties, but that wasn't one. The communist network worked very well, as did our own. A lot of people backed us, just like that, just responded to our letters. It was quite simple.
Joining all those names on the ballot paper will be centrist François Bayrou and Eva Joly for the Green Party. 3 other minor candidates also made the running, but one person who won't be on the ballot paper is Dominique de Villepin. The former Prime Minister, a fierce rival of Sarkozy's, failed to get enough support.
All right, now then, so today saw the deadline for the presidential hopefuls to get their 500 signatures they need. Now, Chris, tell us, does this system work and where do we go from here?
Well, 500 signatures, it seems quite a lot, but in a country that has 42,000 elected local officials, it's not very many. It's the highest number in Europe. Every time it seems the National Front complain, they think they're not going to get there. Marine Le Pen, the far-right candidate, of course, did get through. She got the 500. You could say that the complaining comes from their kind of like willful outsider status running against the system. One man who was not so lucky, you saw him at the end of that report, Dominique de Villepin, a former Prime Minister to Jacques Chirac, a long-time and bitter rival of Nicolas Sarkozy. He didn't manage to make the 500, which kind of shows the extent to which the party system puts pressure on these officials to back the official candidate, as it were. Now, in terms of where we go next, April the 22nd, a first round. All of those candidates that got their 500 taking part in that, a second round 2 weeks later. What's quite interesting from now on is that there are a lot of candidates involved and they all have equal airtime on French television as of Tuesday, and therefore, if you like, an equal platform. You see people coming out of the woodwork that you don't see in the 5 years in between the elections, suddenly given this national platform. If the terrain gets too squeezed, either on the right or the left, it can end in a surprise, as we saw back in 2002 when Marine Le Pen's father, Jean-Marie, also of the National Front, made it through to face Jacques Chirac in the second round.
Could we see a repeat of that this time around, or do you think this is a two-horse race, as everyone's saying?
The polls, as they stand, you have to say it is a two-horse race. Sarkozy on the right and Hollande on the left are by far the most popular candidates on either side of the divide. As I said, though, there is this potential for the vote to become split up. And if you look at the Sarkozy side, what he and members of his party have been saying about things like Europe, immigration, excuse me, I dropped my pen there. And then we had this rather acrimonious debate about halal meat. It's difficult to read any of that really as trying anything other than trying to steal votes from the far right, or at least preventing their voters emigrating to the far right. Now, as far as Hollande is concerned, he's increasingly having the same problem. A guy called Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who leads a coalition of radical left parties, including the Communist. He's just gone past the 10% mark in the polls. It's a bit of a key watershed for him. And a big rally held by his party, which has a lot of kind of grassroots internet activist-style support, being held in Paris this weekend. Some 25,000 people expected for that. So it'll be interesting to see if that has a knock-on effect on the polls as well.
Now, we talk a lot about the far right, don't we? But not an awful lot about the far left. I mean, I think a lot of people watching might not even know there is a far left, particularly in France.
There's normally quite a lot of parties, and they're not always united.
Absolutely. Do you think that the far left or hard left, perhaps I should say, is of any threat, perhaps, to François Hollande?
Well, if you look at what François Hollande has been saying over the last couple of days, he's clearly aware of the advances that Jean-Luc Mélenchon is making. He's been talking up this 75% tax rate for people who earn over €1 million. He's been promising things for the most disadvantaged parts of French society, the suburbs. But at the same time, of course, he's got to, in the end, appeal to the centre ground. That is particularly the case if it comes down to him and Nicolas Sarkozy in the second round. And for a lot of those centrist floating voters, if you like, François Hollande's chief advantage for now is that he's not Nicolas Sarkozy, who's a deeply unpopular president. So as the debate goes on, I think we're going to be seeing more and more concrete policy proposals from Hollande. I should stress that most of the polls have him as a very clear winner in the second round. Around about 54% is a conservative estimate. And if you look at the history of most French presidential elections, that's a huge win.
All right, thank you very much indeed for now, Chris Moore. So no problems in terms of signatures for the two front runners. Today they've both been out on the campaign trail in France's troubled suburbs. Well, urban deprivation has leapt to the forefront of the debate, with campaigners saying the pair are ignoring the issue. Well, in Meaux, which is just outside Paris, Nicolas Sarkozy defended his record, saying that his government had spent 25 billion euros in the biggest regeneration effort ever undertaken in a democratic country. Meanwhile, François Hollande was in Strasbourg. He's been looking to vaunt his left-wing credentials with a host of initiatives for the suburbs. That includes financial incentives for employers who hire people from deprived neighbourhoods. Well, it's time now for Faces and Places. That's France 24's rendezvous with French voters. And today we meet Cassandra Bolivar. She is a restaurant cashier in the city of Gosier in Guadeloupe. Now, the cost of living on the island is a real concern to Cassandra. She tells her story now and talks about her hopes for the future in this report by Nathalie Touré and Julien Arleric.
For 11 years, Cassandra has been working here at Tam Tam Restaurant. She's stayed in the job since Guadeloupe's unemployment rate is now more than 22%. Jobs have become even more scarce following mass protests in 2009 against the expensive cost of living.
Many of my friends have no jobs. They're unemployed. Since 2009, hotels have closed. Restaurants have closed. There are lots of jobless people here. Even the biggest companies are closing.
After work, Cassandra meets her 4-year-old son, Owen. She's brought him up on her own. Since publicly funded daycare centres hardly exist in Guadeloupe, Owen spends most of the time being looked after either by his grandmothers or aunt.
I'm lucky because I have a family who can take care of my son. Because life here is so expensive, particularly daycare centres are. And they're scarce. You can't find one easily, even on Wednesdays, but also during the week.
How much does a daycare centre cost?
$250 to $300 a month, depending on your income.
And you can't afford it?
Oh, no.
With a monthly income of €1,500, including allowances, Cassandra rarely buys anything for herself or her house in order to take care of her son. The high cost of living in Guadeloupe is a major problem for this single mother. She hopes that in 2012, the next French president will deal with the issue.
There's a need for price regulation on local goods, because even local goods are expensive. And of course, imported ones are even more so. Prices are twice as expensive here as they are on the mainland. For example, yogurts. 8 yogurts cost €3. When you buy 24, it's at least $7.60. It's extremely pricey.
So while waiting for better days, Cassandra enjoys the free pleasures offered by Guadeloupe as she walks along the beach with her son.
Well, you can follow the entire French presidential campaign through our mini website dedicated to those elections, which you can see there on your screens. Thanks for watching the Campaign Chronicles.